So it's wonderful to see everybody, and it is a difficult day. It is a difficult day for many people, but all of us have had mums, whether we've had good examples or bad examples. We've all had mums, and we just want to take this opportunity to just honor women in the house. You know, I like what Tom said, whether you are a mum or not, we all have responsibility to be a mum in the house of God, to train up people and to lead them. And we just are so grateful. You know, the women that came in, they got a little key ring here, and it says, don't forget the difference that you make. All of us make a difference. All of us have an atmosphere that we carry. All of us make a difference wherever we are. And let's hope it's a good atmosphere. Let's hope we make a great difference. Wonderful. So this morning I just thought, this is the end of our missions month. And we've had such great teaching on the Samaritan woman. We had Gavin last week here. We've had lots of different teachings, and there's been such great videos about the missionaries we're supporting and that. And as you come down, there's a big sign that says, each one, reach one. And we've been praying in our prayer meetings for them. And so because of that, I just thought that today, for Mother's Day, I would actually speak about each one, reach one. I want to tie in with what we're doing in the house. And I also want to speak about the influence that we carry. And I'm going to speak about a little girl, someone that you might have even, in fact, when I was talking to her, my daughter, she goes, Mom, I don't even think I know that story very well. She's in a few verses in the Bible. And she is nameless. She has no name, but she is named in heaven. She is named in the most important book of life. She knew who God was, and she had a very strong faith. But in the Bible, she's just a little nameless maid. And so I thought we would talk about her today because of the influence that she carried and what she did. So we're going to turn to the Bible. But before I do that, can we just pray? Let's do that. Father, I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity, Lord. Lord, I just pray that the words of my mouth and the meditations that have been in my heart and mind for the last few weeks, Lord, that they will be acceptable, Lord, and that they will land on fertile soil today. In your name, amen. Amen. So if you have your Bible, you can switch it on, but it'll be behind me. I always look at the scriptures behind me anyways, because then I don't have to get reading glasses and everything else that goes with it. Right. 2 Kings, chapter 5, verses 1 to 9. Okay. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman. Now, what's happened is there's been a war. Israel is there, and Israel's always fighting with all of its neighbors. I mean, what's new, Not Israel, but the neighbors fighting with them it's been like that since hundreds and thousands of years, okay? And so this story opens up with there's been a big war. There's been activity happened. The people of Syria have come in, and they've had a fight, and they've raided, and in Israel there. So this is how it starts. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of the army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But Naaman was a mighty warrior. Although he was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At the time, the Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go and see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So Naaman told the king what the young girl had said. Go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I'll send you a letter of introduction, and you go and take some gifts for the king, and off you go. So he set off with a huge amount of wealth. I read different commentaries where they were saying equivalent of what it was nowadays, but it was absolutely a huge amount of money. And he set off with a letter to go and see the king. Verse 7, when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay. Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he is just trying to pick a fight. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent a message to him. Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel. And I won't read the rest of the chapter, but we know the story. So Naaman and all of his entourage, they go up the hill, they go and find this wonderful little prophet that lives somewhere quietly in his little house, and off they go, laden with all the money and the mules, the chariots. It must have been some spectacle that turned up to see him. And, Elisha knew he was coming, but didn't even have the decency to turn her up. Well, that was the reason. He didn't even turn up and say, let me see what's going on. He just sent his servant and said, could you see that man? Could you just go and tell him to dip in the river 7 times? Of course, Naaman is so mad. He's so angry. He's invested all this money. He's invested all this time. And he is a man of great honor. Why would nobody honor him? This was not what he expected. And in desperation, he said, I'm not going to do this. I've come all this way to dip in a dirty river, and he wasn't for that. And then someone said, why don't you just try it? Just give it a go. And he did. And we know the story. He was healed from leprosy, and he was healed also spiritually. So there's 3 simple things I want to talk about from this story. Because the title is, the title of this is, Never Forget the Difference You Make. Faith in the shadows. And so there's 3 little simple things I wanted to bring out here. The first one, hidden faith in the shadows. This is a little girl that has been taken away from her family. She has been removed. It just seems awful. When you read the story, you realize just how painful this story is. This little girl, it doesn't say her age in the Bible, but she probably is between the ages of maybe 10 and 15. So all you young people, she's around your age. She's a teenager. She wouldn't have been a child because a child is no use as a maid. And I would say she's probably been there for 1 or 2 years because she has learned the language. This didn't just happen today, in 1 week, and then this is the story. She has been there. She's had to learn a whole new way of culture. She's had to learn a whole new way of living and language, and she is there, and she has been there for a while. And there's so many sad things about this. We would call it human trafficking. They have taken this girl. What did this little girl see before she went? She could have witnessed her parents being murdered. She could have witnessed houses set on fire. She was torn away from everything. We don't know. Was she an orphan? Were her parents there and she was taken from them? We have no idea. We just know that she was taken and she was captive, And never underestimate one thing that she's kind of a bit like we've been doing Joseph in Sisterhood. He was taken away from everything he knew to a land he knew nothing of. And it's the same with her. It's about 100 miles she's away from home. She has no hope of going back. She is there and she is on her own. But there's one thing with her. It's Jesus. It's God. It's the faith that her parents instilled into her. The kids' church teachers had taught her well. She knew those songs. She knew those verses. She knew the Lord. She's lost everything else, but she knows the Lord. Never underestimate what God is doing through you as a mom, or you as a parent, or you as a kids worker. You are instructing and helping these little children. We know that her spiritual faith was undaunted and strong. God had allowed the tragedy of her captivity to accomplish a greater good. God works in mysterious ways, and we know he works in mysterious ways. I don't understand some of the things, but we just have to leave it to God and see what he's going to do. Basically, she is an unwilling little missionary girl taken captive, and she's living in a strange land with strangers, and she's by herself. God had allowed this tragedy to take place. Her unwavering belief in the power of God to heal and to change lives is powerful, and it's a real true testament of what was inside her. We were singing that song, Bless God. Bless God when my hands are empty. She is there with nothing. Bless God when a praise costs me. Boy, it must have cost her hard to keep her faith. What's happened to me, God? This is so unfair. How am I going to cope? People talk about mental health nowadays. This little girl had everything. This little girl had every reason to be sad, every reason to have something that wasn't going well for her. Another line in that song is, bless God when nobody's watching. She doesn't have anybody watching her, but the Lord is watching her. And she is observant of the atmosphere in the home that she's in. She's observant of that atmosphere. It says that she was, her and Naaman's wife probably would have chopped vegetables together and done things, and she would have looked after things, cleaned and did things. And she must have observed the atmosphere change in this very well-off home. This was a man and a wife, and everything's going great. They're wealthy, they've got money, everything they can buy. But, one day Naaman notices there's some blemishes on him, and he looks, and then he thinks they'll go away, and then he notices, and then he speaks to his wife about them. Look, what do you think? She goes, it looks like I don't know, it'll maybe go away. And you can imagine now they would have worried, and they would have looked at these blemishes, and they would have known the trajectory what leprosy was. How could someone with all this wealth, all this influence, end up with leprosy? But, she must have observed the atmosphere. She must have observed and listened to the conversations and the fear and the growing panic and him putting on clothes. Look, to his wife, does this, you don't see it, do you? I'll pull it up here. You won't see my spots. You can just imagine the fear that there must have been. And she was there observing all of this. And I was thinking to myself, what would I have done? And I'll be honest, I would have been like, serves him right. He took me away from my family. Good on him. Thank you, Lord. You're punishing him. Honestly, we could have easily thought that. She could have thought, I'm going to ignore this. I'm just going to watch him suffer. This is all his fault. Maybe he'll realize what he has done, and maybe he'll send me home again. This is punishment for God. Thank you. That is one way she could have thought. Maybe she had moments when she thought like that. But this brave little girl, she is selfless. She has nothing to gain from Naaman's healing. Nothing. Nothing's going to happen to her. But she immediately thinks, I want to help him. He's in my world. I want to help him, and I want to see what's going to happen. She has nothing to gain from this. Leprosy is a horrible disease, and it's a disease that we don't hear about much nowadays. There's different cures and things like that. But years ago, when you had leprosy, you read of stories in the Bible when people had leprosy, they were shunned in society. They were covered with all sorts of sores and that. It starts off with little skin lesions, and then it starts affecting the nerves in your body. Then the muscles get weak, and then deformities happen, and outer bits of your body start to fall off. So your fingers start to get diseased, and they fall off, and your ears. And, people didn't know what it was. So if you don't know what it does, let's just ignore it. Let's just put you out. And there was so many different things that if you had leprosy, you had to live outside the camp. And when these lepers would come in, years ago, when these lepers would come into town, they needed to sometimes come and get some groceries and do different things. They would have to ring a bell, unclean, unclean. And they would have to, and people go, oh, there's a leper. And you can imagine parents hiding their children. And this little girl is living in a house with a man with leprosy, but she's living with a strong faith in God. And so I remember as a little girl, I grew up in Afghanistan, and, we saw many different illnesses and beggars begging and things like that. And I remember particularly being really scared because there was one person that really frightened me. There was this beggar, and he had leprosy, and my dad explained to me his leprosy. He had no fingers. He used to hold his little bowl because he had nothing to hold on to. And he had a stick because you could see some of his toes had fallen off, and he used to limp along, and his ears had shriveled down. And the worst thing was he had no nose. There was these two holes that he would breathe through, and there was always mucus coming out, and his eyes. That's what it was like. And he would come, and he just looked so awful. And I just think, Naaman knows what leprosy is. Can you imagine him thinking, this is my future. This is my path. And what am I going to do? And he was desperate. He was really desperate, as everybody would. They would discover they had leprosy. So she makes a choice. Do I ignore him and enjoy watching his demise? Or do I start praying? Do I start praying to the God that I believe in? And her faith is hidden in the shadows, and she comes out. The second point is, she comes out, she has the courage to speak from the shadows that she's working in. It's interesting, we saw the little clip on courage there, and courage is really a difficult thing for all of us to have. And she musters up this courage, which is really from the Lord. And she one day is, working with with her servant, and she just finally says in verse 3, I wish that my master was with the prophet in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy. She cared enough to speak up and believe that God could heal Elijah. There's a wonderful verse in Hebrews 11, verse 1. It says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. And she is hoping that this could happen, but she hasn't seen it. And do you know what I find amazing by this story? No one has been cured from leprosy. Because, all those years later, when Jesus speaks in Luke chapter 4, verse 27, I think it is, and he says, there were many lepers in the time of Elisha, the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed except for Naaman the Syrian. And this little girl isn't just speaking out. It would have been very easy for her to say, she knew all the stories. She knew the stories of David and Goliath. She knew the stories of the parting of the water and all those wonderful miracles. If they'd had a lack in something, she could have said, Elisha could do this for you, because she would recall he's done this previously. But she is speaking out something in faith that has never been done before. She has unbelievable courage and faith in a God who she believes in. And so she speaks up and says this. Her voice required immense courage. And this courageous act goes against everything that she stands for. She is a girl. She is a teenager. She is a foreigner. She is a slave. She has absolutely no rights. And she has a different belief system than the country that she's living in. There's nothing that makes sense about this voice that she has. But what she does have, she doesn't have anything else. She doesn't have rights, she doesn't have money, she doesn't have anything. But she has a voice and she has a faith. And in her world, each one reach one. She's thinking, he's in my world, I'm going to step out and I'm going to speak. And I find it very interesting as well. In a world where she had little control over any of her circumstances, her voice becomes a catalyst of change. In fact, we're going to find out that her voice actually affects a nation. And she has a profound effect, not just in the family, but it ends up having in the nation. I find it interesting that Naaman, he is very desperate. And you know that saying, desperate people do desperate things. And it is true. When you're really desperate about something, you'll go to all sorts of lengths. You've heard about people that are desperate to lose weight or desperate to... I don't know why I thought about that, but you think of different things. They're desperate for something. They'll go to all lengths to get this. They want something. They'll try every store to buy this thing, and they're desperate for it. They're determined to do it, And it's amazing that this high-ranking official who has everything at his fingertips, he listens to his wife, for a start. That's quite amazing, isn't it? That a man listens to his wife, and she says, hey, listen, my maid was saying this. He must have been so desperate that he thought, what did she say? What did she say? Isn't that amazing? You need to get into the context of the culture. He's listening to his wife, who's listening to a slave girl. And it's a child. It's a teenager. And it is unbelievable, but he is so desperate. Naaman then speaks to the king about this hope he has, because he is in a sense of, he is absolutely hopeless. He knows there's nothing going, he's in a situation like that. And so he goes to the king and says, this girl has said this to me. And the king says, oh, well, we'll just see what happens. And he says, well, I'll write a letter for you. And, you've got an official letter, so that's good. And Naaman saddles up his donkeys and his mules with all the worldly goods, with everything that he can, and thinks, great, you can imagine his tick list. Have a shower that day and wear clean clothes, Make sure you take plenty of gold. Make sure you take new changes of clothes. The prophet might like that. Take some nice spices and some foods from the land. Oh, take a letter of recognition in case somebody asks things. He's gone through everything, and he's got it all sorted. And that's what he knows what to do. The most important part of this story isn't that he's just physically healed, but actually he finds God. He finds that there is a God that he learns to serve. Think about what she could lose. I began to think about what she could lose. I mean, I wonder what she thought when she started seeing all the planning and that was going into it. Oh goodness, hope Elisha's still alive. That would have been her first thought. I hope he's still alive, because she doesn't know. There's no communication. They're about 150 miles away. I hope he heals. What if he doesn't heal? I remember I've prayed for people, and you pray and you're like, I believe God can do it, and you're like, and what if he doesn't? Am I going to look silly? What's going to happen? I thought, if it doesn't work well for her, what'll happen? Will he just get annoyed at her? Will he then sell her on to another family? What would happen to her? Would he beat her? I don't know. I just don't know. She has a lot to lose, but she takes courage and she speaks up. She had no idea what her future was, but she decided. She steps out from the shadows. She stirs up the courage she has within to speak up. And the third thing is, it's like getting a stone and dropping a stone in a pond. Have you ever dropped a little stone and you see the ripples going out? And that's what she's done in this simple little act. The ripple effect on each one reach one. You have such power, and you don't realize you have such power in your world. You can only reach the people in your world that you can reach. I can't reach them because I'm not in your world. And so this ripple effect, her small and insignificant act of sharing a hopeful message sets off a series of events that not only change Naaman's life, but changes the spiritual landscape of Syria. Imagine one voice that changes the trajectory of the highest-ranking official in the land. And, I'm just going to pick up the story here in 2 Kings 5. He goes, and we know that he's been healed and everything's happened. And Naaman is absolutely gobsmacked. He is so shocked that he has been healed. And it says in verse 15, he then went back to see Elisha. Him and his whole entourage stood before him and said, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no God anywhere on earth other than the God of Israel. And in gratitude, please let me give you a gift. Elisha says, as God lives, the God who I'm serving, I will take nothing from you. Naaman tried his best. Oh, please take this. No, I brought it all for you. Look at all this stuff. He's showing the clothes. Look, this would fit you. This would suit you. Please take it. I can see you don't have much. And he says, no. Because, salvation is free. Getting to know Jesus and getting to know God, it's a free gift. If he had taken that gift, Naaman would have gone back and said, yep, it was great. I brought the letter. I gave the gift, and I'm healed, and everything's fine. He would have been part of his miracle. Part of his miracle would have been, I have contributed towards my miracle. But when God moves in the hearts of people, when God moves in our church, it's nothing to do with us. It's all to do with him. When he moves in your lives, when you speak, when you speak out, and you share things about God, and you share things, he is the one that gets the glory for what happens. And so Elisha said, no, I'm not taking anything. And Naaman said, if you won't take anything, said Naaman, please can I ask, can I just get my 2 donkeys with their baskets? Can I fill up all this dirt from this area here? I want to take it back. You see, he's a superstitious person. The only God he knows is there's lots of gods. And, he probably had visited many temples back in Syria. He went probably there looking for a cure and going to all these different places, offering gifts to all these different gods. He had probably done so much. And then he's realized, it's free. I don't want to lose this moment. If I could take some of this dirt back, if I could have it just planted, every time I stand outside my house, I stand on this dirt, I'll know that there's a God in heaven. I don't want to lose this moment. But he doesn't realize that, God isn't a territorial God like the gods he's been used to in Syria. God goes with him. God goes in his heart. He doesn't need that dirt, but he doesn't know that. He's a young Christian. And so we just think, yeah, and Elijah says, go in peace. Elijah's like, I know what's going to happen. You're going to get to know him on your journey. You're going to realize it's not about the dirt that you stood in. It's not about the special water there. Never get people to think, never be duped by things on television like, if you buy this, it'll bring you good luck, or this little water from here, or this special oil. There's nothing special in that. He is special. He is the special one. He's the one that gets the glory in our world, nothing else. And so Naaman has this amazing conversion. We sung that song, I hope we're going to end with, you have no rival, you have no equal. Because something, he knows the other gods in his country. He knows all the different things. And he's now singing it. You can imagine him singing that song, going home, whoa, there is no God like Jehovah. There is no rival. He is the God. Look at my skin. He must have just been so amazed, but so grateful. He becomes a worshiper. He goes back and he changes the atmosphere in Syria, in the whole area there. He took back, you can imagine him coming back and people are puzzled and like, why have you come back with all these gifts? And he said, something? I know it's not about the gifts. It's not about buying your salvation. Salvation is free. Anyone who calls on his name at any time in their life, even if it's their last breath, anyone can call on the name of Jesus and they will be saved. He was now able to come back and proclaim that there is now, and declare that there is a God in heaven who heals. Her simple act of caring for Naaman's well-being demonstrated that even the smallest actions can have monumental consequences. History and, different stories that are shared with about missionaries that have gone abroad. Some great things have taken place by some very simple people who just dared to believe that if I could make a difference, if I could go there, if I could learn the language, if I could live amongst the people, if I could do something small, then God could use my small offering and do something great. And this ripple effect that started with her saying something, and when he gets healed, that ripple effect, everybody in Syria knew. Because it's not just the king of the nation of Syria. He's the highest ranking, army commander. Everybody knows who Naaman is. And so everyone is going to find out who Naaman's God is now. He is wonderful. Now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a lady called Jane Ritchie. Now, Jane Ritchie, nobody will know who Jane Ritchie is. Jane Ritchie lived many, many years ago. If she was alive now, she probably would be 120 or something. We don't know. She was my grandmother. And she was a woman who lived as a fisherman's wife in a little village, 40 miles north of here. And she was there, and, she had been raised, being a good living person, but she had 3 children. Her husband was a fisherman. And one day there was some meetings, and there was a guy come up from down south, Alan Benson, and he had come up and he had set up a tent and he was doing some services. And she went along and she heard about this Jesus for the first time. And she was amazed, wow, I didn't know about Jesus. And it said that in the village, that she was the 3rd one in the village to find Jesus. I think her sister-in-law was the 2nd one. And she found Jesus and she came home, and my dad recalls, his mom coming home and saying, right, tomorrow's Sunday, we're going to church. And my dad had never been to church before. He had never been to this church that they were going to. And she got them all smart. My dad was 12. My aunt was 10, and his younger brother was 7. She got them all spruced up and marched them all off to church. And my dad found Jesus, and there was a little revival that happened in the mid-1940s in the Northeast there. And because she was so determined that she would pass her faith on to her children, and she spoke with them, and she shared the gospel to them, and she would read to them, and whatever. She didn't want my dad to become a fisherman like everyone else. She worked hard so that she could put him to university. So he came into Aberdeen and went to university and felt God calling him to go to Bible school. And, he went to Bible school, and then, the story, he ended up in Afghanistan as a missionary. Jane Ritchie, my granny, because she made that decision, she influenced her children. And my granny never, ever left the shores of Scotland again. She never left Scotland, but her witness left Scotland, her prayers left. And when my dad was on the mission field, it was her tithe money that she would tithe to the local church that kept him in the mission field through very dark days when it was difficult. And it was her prayers that kept them going, that kept Mum and him going. And, my dad went there and he started learning the language and reading the language. And he was along with 2 or 3 other people, that decided that the Afghans deserved to have a New Testament in their language. So him, and alongside another lady called Lisa Kingma, she was a wonderful missionary from Finland, and they never had any children. And they just served God, her and her husband, diligently in Kabul, along with my dad and a blind man who was one of the first converts in the country. And they did produce a New Testament. This is the New Testament. And this New Testament is written for the Afghans. It's in Dari. And it all started with a young fisherman's wife that just put her hand up and said, I want to follow Jesus. I thought I knew who God was. I've been to church. I thought I was good living, but I just want to find out more about this Jesus. And so, I believe heaven's going to be a wonderful place. I want to meet this little Naaman's girl. This maid. I want to find out all about her. I want to ask her all the different questions. I want to celebrate her. I'm sure she's been well celebrated. But when my granny got to heaven, I bet there was a lot of Afghans came up to her and said, thank you so much. That seed you sowed. Well, that seed helped someone, Brother John come and translate the New Testament. This has now been worded by missionaries we support, Jeff and Sue, and there's another version of this. But, in a few weeks' time, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we're going to have, we've been looking out for the Afghans and the refugees in our city, and we've had them in our church here. We've been just being friendly, making them meals, having bouncy castles for the children. I have never given them this Bible yet, but I'm praying that the Lord will lead me and guide me to give this to someone. But it's a long journey. When you're a Muslim, it's a long journey. You want to build their trust. You want to come alongside them. And so, you don't know who you're going to influence in your world. And, her willingness to be bold was amazing. And, I want to speak to the young people over here. I think that's where the youth are all sitting. And I am heavily invested in the youth in this church because I've got a pile of grandchildren that are going to be coming through you guys for years to come. And I need you guys to be amazing, Caleb. But, there's there's no pressure. But, there's one verse I want to leave all these lovely young people here. It's in 1 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 12. And I would say this, if the little maid was here, I would say it to her, don't be intimidated by those who are older than you. Simply be the example they need to see by being faithful and true to all that you do. Speak the truth. Live a life of purity and authentic love as you remain strong in your faith. Our kids have a hard time in school. It is hard. They may not have the courage to come underneath the shadows and to speak. It took a while for her to come out of there, but she stayed in the shadows praying. Lord, when's the opportunity? Lord, can you speak to me? Stand strong, be firm, be unmovable in your faith, just like this little girl. And I was just going to finish off by saying something. It's not who you are. Who you are is really not important, because we could all, when you speak to somebody and they ask you who they are, and then you start talking about your jobs and your careers and what you've done. Who you are is not really that important. It's who you serve that matters. That's the only thing that matters. And God's providence and sovereignty is God. It's his will. I don't understand why he would allow a little girl to be captured and human trafficked to 100 miles from home. I don't understand that, but I do know that God uses the most crazy situations, and he can turn them for good. She's in good company with Daniel and Joseph and other people in the Bible. You know, it has an eternal impact. You know, her mission was to reach this one man. That's all she ever made. I don't know whatever happened in her life, but she reached this one man. What is your reach? Is it a work colleague? Is it a family member? Is it a neighbor? Is it a refugee? Is it somebody at school? Everybody can reach somebody. And we don't know what it is. It could be a school friend. But she used the only tools she had. She didn't have books. She didn't have iPads. She didn't have podcasts and all that kind of stuff. The only thing she had was her voice. And she spoke up at the right time. You know, when Tom was preaching, he had a wonderful slide up, and it showed about each one. And because we started the series, the month of this, and we're just going to end the month with this, I just wanted to bring that slide up just now. And it was all the different people, and I can't remember everybody's names, but, you know, this person was saved under his ministry, and Dwight Moody, you know, and you go on, and it came to Billy Graham. Well, I'm just going to add a little bit more to Billy Graham. Because, you know, in 1955, Billy Graham came to Glasgow. And in Glasgow, there was a young man, well, he was maybe in his mid-30s by then, Jim Duthie, and Ian's dad, and he went, there's Ian with his dad there, and you know, he went down to Glasgow. He had been a good living person. He had come from a Christian background. He knew the way. He had just never made time in his world to put his hand up. And in that large gathering, he put his hand up, and it changed the trajectory of his world. You know, both Ian's mum and dad, they both came from Christian backgrounds, but Ian is the only one that got the baton of faith. Because compromises were made in who they married. Compromises were made in what they did. They thought attending church and doing the right thing is good enough. But you know, Billy Graham, he impacted Jim so much that he put his hand up, and he came back and started attending a local Baptist church, and then met the love of his life, which was Ian's mom, and they got married, and they only had one son. And you know, Jim only lived for about 27 or 28 years as a Christian. He had lived for more years not as a Christian, as a Christ follower. But you know, he influenced Ian, and I was thinking, you know, I wonder how many times they drove past this building on their way to Pataudry to watch football, never knowing that one day this building would have such a significance, all because one man decided that he would put his hand up and then come back and then make decisions that he was going to marry the right person and influence one person. And you know, so we stand here today on the shoulders of giants, the shoulders of brave people, the shoulders of people who have courage and tenacity and boldness to use their voice. So just in summing up just now, I just wanted to say, you know, maybe some of you need a revelation like Naaman. You know, some of you have thought, you know, I'm coming to church all the time. It's good, you know. Some of you are maybe sitting and, you know, your wife knows Jesus or your husband knows Jesus, but you haven't made that decision yourself. Or some of you are thinking, you know, well, I do all the right things. Surely I'm good enough. But I just want to give everybody an opportunity. So we're just going to close our eyes. And there's people here with a book to give you, with a gospel to give you. And, you know, if you are that person, if you think, you know what, I've been doing this long enough, I'm just going to step out from the shadows, and I'm just going to put my hand up, and I'm just going to say, Lord Jesus, please see me, and please come into my life. If that is you, do you want to put your hand up so that somebody can see it? Just put your hand up nice and tall so that somebody can see it, and we'll put a Bible in your hand. This week, I've never done an appeal. I'm stepping out of from the curtain of courage as well. I thought, I can't do this. And all week I said, Lord, I just want to pray. Even if it's just one hand, I'm going to do it, Lord. I'm going to stand and I'm going to give you honor and just say, is there somebody that needs Jesus? Wonderful. You know, maybe you're like Jim Duthie. You're a good, upright person and you think, oh, I just need to find the Lord. You know, you can do that at any time. If you didn't have the courage to put your hand up just now, you can come and speak to the people down here at the prayer team. You can come and say, you know what, I didn't have the courage to put up my hand, but I really want to do it, and I want to change the trajectory of my life. If you want to look up just now, You know, we all just have one life to live. Maybe you need a physical healing. I don't think anyone here has leprosy, but maybe you have a physical healing. Maybe there's something that you've asked for prayer before, and that prayer has happened, and you've thought, oh, I prayed, and it hasn't happened. But you know, maybe this is the day. I'm going to keep on, keeping on, keeping on. And then one day, I've prayed for people, and I remember praying for someone, and they longed to have a baby, and I prayed for them, and very soon she got pregnant, but I've prayed for many and they haven't. But it's not going to stop me praying for other people. So what I would say is, come down to the front here. During this time, when we sing this final song, if you need to get some prayer, there's a prayer team that will come and love to pray with you. If you need something, if there's something that's bothering you, something that you need a physical healing from, we've dealt with the spiritual healing because people have got saved in the house today, but we're going to pray for physical healing. And if that's you, why don't you come down? Be brave, come out of the shadows, and we'd love to pray with you. God bless you and have a lovely day.